What if the thing keeping you stuck isn't what you lost, but what you have refused to grieve? Have you ever noticed that two people can experience the exact same loss and yet come out completely different? One becomes bitter, the other becomes stronger. One gets stuck in what they lost, the other finds a way forward. And the question is, what makes the difference? In this week's episode, we're diving into the story of Ruth, Naomi, and Orpah, not as a love story, but as a story about grief, healing, identity, and the choices we make after loss. Now, as a social worker and a trauma-informed coach, and a woman who understands what it means to rebuild after difficult seasons, I'm exploring questions many of us avoid. What losses are you still carrying? Has your pain changed the way you see God? And are you moving toward healing or back toward what's familiar? If you have experienced loss, disappointment, heartbreak, or a season that changed you, this conversation is for you. So join me in this episode that I have titled From Loss to Loyalty, because healing begins when we stop letting our pain tell us who we are.
Welcome to Behold and Become, a space for integrated healing and becoming. Here you will enjoy teachings and conversations that heal the mind, shape the soul, and transform from the inside out. I'm Brenda Shoko, your host, pastor, author, social worker, and transformation coach.
Welcome to Behold and Become. This is the space where we do the real work, the integrated work of healing and becoming. I'm your host, Brenda, and I'm glad that you are here. Whether you're listening in your car, folding laundry, or just sitting in a quiet house that feels too quiet, I want you to know you belong here. So today we're starting something special, a series through the book of Ruth. And if you're familiar with Ruth, you might think you know the story. Oh yeah, well, it's a girl meets boy, boy rescues girl, they live happily ever after. But we are going to sit in the messy parts that happen before the romance, because that's where most of us live. So today's episode is called From Loss to Loyalty. And if you're here because you're hurting, if you showed up today carrying something heavy, this one's for you. Let's just start by being honest about where Ruth and Naomi are standing when this book opens. So these are women who are acquainted with grief. We're talking about the loss of husbands. And in that culture, that wasn't just an emotional loss. This was a loss of identity, a loss of financial security, a loss of social standing. Their entire expected future had died. They were standing at a graveside with empty hands and no plan. And here's what I want you to see. They responded to the exact same path in two completely different ways. Now, we have Naomi. She looks at her life and lets the loss write the narrative. She actually tells people, don't call me Naomi anymore. Now, Naomi means pleasant. She says, call me Mara. Mara means bitter. She literally relabels herself by her wound. She looked at what she had lost and concluded that God had turned against her. Her view of God became distorted by her circumstances. I've been there. Have you? Where you look at your life and think, God, what did I do to deserve this? Why are you doing this to me? Then we have Ruth. Now, pay attention to this. Ruth lost the exact same things. Same husband, same security, same future. But somehow, she made a different choice. She acknowledged the loss, yes. She felt it, but she refused to let it become her identity. She looked at Naomi, this bitter, empty woman with nothing to offer. And instead of seeing a liability, she saw a connection. She saw something bigger. She saw a connection to God. So here's the question we have to sit with today. And I want you to really ask yourself this. What is it that you have lost that is now coloring how you see God? Selah. Is it a marriage that didn't work out? Is it a job that fell through? A dream that died? A pregnancy that didn't make it? A friendship that ended badly? Or a parent that you lost too soon? And because of that loss, has your image of God changed? Do you find yourself moving through life like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop, secretly believing that God is out to get you, or that he's holding out on you, like he gave you good things once but now he's changed his mind? Here's what I've learned in my years of doing this work. You cannot heal what you refuse to acknowledge. Now, I see so many women who try to start over by pretending the past doesn't hurt. They pick up their loss, put it in a pretty box, and shove it to the back of the closet of their hearts. They put on a brave face. They show up to church with a smile. They say all the right Christian things. I'm blessed, I'm favored, I'm trusting God. But trauma doesn't work that way. It sips out. It shows up in your irritability with the kids. It shows up in the way you pull away from people who try to love you. It shows up in the sleepless nights and the racing thoughts and the way your stomach drops when you let yourself remember. Naomi processed her losses by projecting it onto her name, onto God. She acknowledged it, but she let it define her. Ruth, on the other hand, acknowledged it, but she let God define her. And I need you to hear this. Grief isn't just about death. It's the loss of a marriage, the loss of a dream for your child, the loss of a season of life, the loss of safety in a relationship, the loss of your health, the loss of the future you thought you'd have. Until you name it, you cannot heal it. So here's my question for you, and I want you to really sit with this. Forget the church answer, forget the I'm blessed and highly favored response. Get real with yourself. What death have you experienced recently that you haven't fully mourned? Not just acknowledged in passing, not just mentioned in a prayer request, but truly grieved, like you sat with it, you wept over it, you let yourself feel. Because here's what I've learned. Whatever you don't mourn, you will either marry or bury alive. You will attach yourself to it and let it become your identity like Naomi. Or you will try to bury it, but burying things alive means they keep moving underneath the surface. They keep causing chaos in your soul. We have to learn to mourn so we can heal. Now let's talk about the third woman in this story. This one we usually forget, and I want to talk about Orpah. We don't talk about her enough, but she represents something really important. Orpah also packed her bags to live with Naomi. Her heart was in the right place initially. She was ready to go. She was loyal. She was committed. But then Naomi laid out the hard truth. I have nothing to offer you, Orpah. No husbands, no future, no security. Just go back. And you know what? Orpah made a choice. She turned back. She kissed Naomi goodbye and went home. Now, here's what I need you to understand about Orpah. She wasn't evil. She wasn't being disloyal in some dramatic, villainous way. She was being practical. She looked at the situation logically and thought, this doesn't make sense. Why would I follow a bitter old woman into complete uncertainty when I can go back to what I know? And honestly, that's reasonable. That's what most of us will do. That's what our friends would advise us to do. So she returned to the familiar. She went back to her people, back to her gods, back to what she used to know. And this shows us something really important. People respond differently to God. Orpah heard the same speech Ruth heard. She felt the same loss Ruth felt. But one woman turned back and one woman pressed forward. Probably Orpah wasn't convicted enough to trust this new God. Maybe the pain of the past still had a stronghold on her. Maybe the familiar, even if it was tied to her loss, felt safer than the unknown. But here's what stands out to me about Orpah. She was going back to a place that would constantly remind her of what she had lost. Every street, every face, every memory in Moab would whisper, remember when your husband was young? Remember before the loss? She was choosing to remain in the geography of her grief. Ruth, on the other hand, made a different calculation. She made a decision to move on from her place of loss and trust a God she barely knew to lead her into a place she had never seen. Ruth wasn't acting based on logic. She was acting based on something deeper. She was loyal enough to stick with Naomi because she saw something in Naomi that Naomi could not see in herself. She saw God. Even in the bitterness, even in the emptiness, even when Naomi had nothing to offer. Now listen to Ruth's words. You've probably heard them at weddings. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Now, this is not just poetic language. This is not a love song. This is a conversion. When she said that, she was leaving behind the identity of Moab, which in scripture represents the world, the flesh, everything opposed to God's people, and aligning herself with the covenant. She was burning the bridges. She was saying, there is no going back. Here's the truth I need you to grab hold of today. Healing requires a decision to not go back to what was familiar. Even if the future looks completely uncertain, you cannot recover what you are unwilling to leave. Some of you are stuck, really stuck, because you keep running back to Moab. You keep running back to the toxic relationship, back to the old mindset, back to the comfort of a ministry, not because it's good for you, but because it's familiar. But let me tell you something about familiar. Familiar is not the same as safe. Familiar is not the same as good. And familiar is just familiar. The text says Ruth clung to Naomi. The word is important. In Hebrew, it means she bonded to her. She stuck close. She refused to detach. Ruth didn't just feel loyalty in her heart. She acted on it. She walked. She put one foot in front of the other and headed toward a future she could not see. This is where we have to get practical. You can have all the feelings about wanting to heal. You can listen to every podcast, including this one. You can read every book. You can attend every workshop. But if you don't take an action step, you will end up like Oprah, back to where you started, still surrounded by your loss. So let's get practical. Let's talk about what this actually looks like on a Tuesday afternoon when you're trying to figure out your life. I want you to identify one old pattern, just one Moab mindset that you need to leave behind this week. Not next month, not when you feel ready, this week. In fact, today. Maybe it's the lie that says God is against you. Every time that thought pops up, you have to capture it and replace it with the truth. Maybe it's the habit of isolating yourself when you're hurting. You pull away from people, you stop returning calls, you disappear. That's a Moab pattern. Maybe it's rehearsing your loss every day instead of rehearsing God's faithfulness. You play the tape over and over and over. What went wrong, what you could have done differently, how they hurt you, how you hurt, and that tape keeps you trapped. Then I want you to identify one relationship or one habit that you need to cling to that points you towards God. For Ruth, it was Naomi, even in her bitterness. Even though Naomi was wounded, even though Naomi had nothing to give, Ruth clung to her because she represented connection to something bigger. Who is your Naomi? Who is that person, even when they're imperfect, even when they're going through their own stuff, connect you to God? Maybe it's a mentor. Maybe it's a friend who prays with you. Maybe it's a small group. Maybe it's a counselor who helps you see yourself clearly. Cling to them. Don't let them go. Text them when you're struggling. Be honest. Be honest with them about where you are at. Let them show up for you. Because here's the truth. Healing happens in a community, not in isolation. It happens when we stop trying to figure it all alone and let other people walk with us. So here's what I want you to take with you today. You have a choice. You can be like Naomi and let your loss rename you. You can be like Oprah and go back to what's familiar, even if it keeps you stuck in your grief. Or you can be like Ruth, acknowledge the loss, refuse to let it define you, and make a decision to cling to God and His people, even when you can't see where the road is leading. Next week, we're going to keep walking with Ruth. We're going to talk about what happens when you have the courage to step into unfamiliar fields. When you have to start at the bottom and trust that God is guiding your steps even when you feel invisible. But for this week, for today, your assignment is simple. Name what you have lost. Really name it. Let yourself grieve it, and then identify one Moab mindset you need to leave behind and one Naomi you need to cling to. You are not alone in this. The God who saw Ruth in Moab sees you right now where you are, and He's not done with your story yet. Before we close, I want to speak directly to the woman who listened to this episode and thought, that's me. Maybe you've recognized loss that you haven't fully grieved. Maybe you've identified a pattern that's keeping you stuck. Maybe you have realized that it's time to stop surviving and start healing. If that's where you are, I want you to know that you don't have to walk that journey alone. That's exactly why I created the Lost to Loyalty program. It's a faith-based coaching journey designed to help women move from pain to purpose, heal emotional wounds, reclaim their voice, rebuild their confidence, and step into the future God has for them. Together, we'll explore the belief patterns and strongholds that may be keeping you bound while creating space for healing, growth, and transformation. Because your story is not over and your loss does not get the final say. And the chapter you are in right now is not the end of your story. If you're ready to move from loss to loyalty, from pain to purpose, I'd love to walk alongside you. You can reach out to me directly for more information about the program through the contact below. Until next time, remember, healing begins when we stop letting our pain define us and start allowing God to shape what comes next. Thank you for being here. And if this episode helped you, share it with a friend who needs to hear it. And remember, healing begins when we stop running away from our pain and start making loyal decisions based on our new identity, not on our old trauma.